Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Emhauser, coming at you on everywhere, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all the places at Hawk Blogger. And we're starting a little later this morning because there's a special guest, a first-time guest that we're bringing on the show. And I've labeled him a mystery guest because I want people to have a few guesses at it. You should hopefully be able to tell by the thumbnail, at least the one that was preceding the show. This is a guy that is emblematic of the Pacific Northwest. He has, on his best moments, been one of the best players in Seahawks history, a true Seahawks legend, and responsible in a lot of ways for the first Seahawks Super Bowl in this franchise's history. He's also had some rough times, whether it's at University of Washington or in Seattle. And you know, the adversity that he's overcome to become the player that he was for Seattle, I think is one of the lesser told stories of all the Seahawks players for that amazing Legion of Boom era. If you haven't guessed, it is our pal, Jermaine Kearse of your Seattle Seahawks. How are you doing, Jermaine? Good to see you, man.
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I don't know if everybody knows, you know, you are tried and true Pacific Northwest, grew up here, played at University of Washington, played for the Seahawks. We always talk with players that come from the South or other parts of the country that have to come up and adjust to the Northwest. You ended up going to New York. What was it like for you after all this time in the Northwest, heading out there to the Big Apple?
It was different for sure. Different culture. I mean, I didn't really start to notice a lot of the difference between the Northeast and the Pacific Northwest until probably my second year there, because I got traded a week before the first game. And so I was instantly thrown into the deep end of the water, and I was just trying to swim at that time. But I actually really liked it out in New Jersey. I met some really cool people out there, some great people, and created some really good relationships with some of my teammates out there. So not all was down in the dumps out in Florham Park, but there was a lot of good that came out of it.
When you look back on what was a really successful NFL career, I'm curious, like what your thoughts are about your career. What do you think about when you think about your career in the NFL?
Well, I mean, I'm super blessed just coming out of this situation, being undrafted and then, being able to kind of work my way up to, a starting spot. I feel very proud of what I was able to accomplish, given the circumstances that I was, coming out of, just being an undrafted free agent, even though I felt like I should have gotten drafted, whether it was junior year or senior year, whether if I would have left my junior year, or after. But curveballs come and, you kind of just make do with the situation you have and make the most of each opportunity. And, that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, I think that's part of your story. And I talked about it at the Open. I mean, your first season at University of Washington was a rough first season. That you guys didn't win a game that year.
Yeah.
Obviously you made a huge impression with your performance over your time at the University of Washington. Then you don't get drafted and you enter a team that already had a lot of talent and a lot of alpha, mentalities on there. And then your first year in the NFL, you really didn't get on the field much on offense. So how do you kind of rectify that in your head? Like, how did you go from all of those kind of obstacles to where by your second year, and then we'll talk about where you got, like, how did you mentally kind of work through all that?
Yeah. I mean, even through college, a lot of people kind of ask, what sports I played growing up. And, I always played basketball, was always a basketball player at the beginning, and football kind of came a little later. I'm just always a very competitive person. I think it was more so my competitiveness, my love for competing and being competitive more than my love for each sport that I played. And so Even in college, I knew I kind of had the ability to be able to compete at the highest level, and then I never really doubted that I wasn't good enough to play in the NFL. But so I never really had doubt that I couldn't perform and make an NFL team. Like I said, I felt like I probably should have been drafted. I didn't even get invited to the Senior Bowl. That was probably one of the most surprising things that I uh, came across. But even when I signed with Seattle, I had a great receivers coach in Kippy Brown, and who kind of fought for me to be on the or for me to sign there. And even that first training camp, or even OTAs actually, because it started off with OTAs, and I was doing really well, which I felt like I was doing really well, and then I had a Jones fracture in my foot, which kind of put me out a little bit, which I was like, they're going to release me. I'm going to be done. But they allowed me to rehab and come back in camp, and I thought I had a really good camp. I thought I would have made the team based off on my performance throughout training camp and even in the preseason games. But Pete told me that 1 week that I missed in the beginning I think there were just some politics. We had we had Braylon Edwards, Golden Tate on the team, Sidney Rice. So there was a lot of vets on the team, which is totally understandable. That's just the politics of, and the business of playing professional sports. So I just kind of kept focused, and I had really good vets that kind of took me under the wings, like Sidney Rice, who's kind of like who I call like my OG, and just kind of stayed the course. And I knew I had the ability to play. So it was just a matter of when I would get my opportunities. And, eventually that time came.
What do you think talent evaluators missed? Like, why didn't they see what you were, whether it's the Senior Bowl or other places?
I think, if you look at my college numbers were pretty solid. I had multiple seasons with double digit touchdowns. My junior year, I went for over 1,000 yards, and I think I had about like 13 or 14 touchdowns. I think the thing that gets missed is that we just didn't really win like that. Mm-hmm. I went 0-12 my first year. I think 6-5-7 or 6-6 or something like that. We didn't go to a bowl game, so it must have been like 5 or 7 my second year. And then we started going to a bowl game and having some success. It wasn't really the flashiest, it wasn't the biggest, the fastest. But I think if we won a lot more, I think my performances would have been highlighted a little bit more, but it is what it is.
You wound up, I don't know if you even know this, you're in the top 40 of almost top 35 of any undrafted receiver in the history of the NFL in terms of yards, touchdowns, in your time there, over your career. And you were part of a pretty special room that had multiple undrafted free agents. Doug Baldwin's, on that list as well. What was it like, having, you got Sidney Rice, who had signed a big free agent contract. You had Braylon Edwards, who was a highly touted pick, at least when you came in. Golden Tate was an early pick. And then you and Doug were undrafted free agents. What was that dynamic like?
We had a great dynamic. Like I said, we had really good leadership, especially with Sidney, who really just kind of was the leader of the group. He showed a lot of us young guys, kind of the way to go about things. But I felt like our receiver group dynamic was really good. We all got along. There was, a few speed bumps when Percy came into the room, which that's my guy. I love Percy. I had a really good relationship with him. He bumped heads with other people. But, just in general, I think our room really had a good vibe. We all got along and we all hung out with each other. And I think that's kind of what made our group, pretty special in our way.
You are responsible for, I think, 3 of the best catches and most momentous catches in the history of the franchise. You might argue there's more than 3, but there's 3 that come to mind for me. The The first of which is what turned out to be the game-winning touchdown in the NFC Championship against the 49ers. And fourth down. And I think there's one of the things that's interesting about that play for me is it was 3rd and 22, the play before that, and all the way, at the 50-yard line. And if Russ hadn't completed the pass to Zach Miller for 15 yards to even get to a questionable decision there, might not have had the opportunity. So talk us through, that was one of the most intense football games I ever witnessed in real life. What was it like being in that game, and what was it like in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers NFC Championship, I mean, what better, scenario can you ask for, for a Niner fan or a Seahawks fan? It's one of the biggest games in the conference against your division rival. And so, Lumen Field was rocking, during that time. I mean, it still is, but back then, I went to a couple games this year, and I'm just like, man, compared to when we play, this
it's
thing,
different.
It is a little different, and hopefully we kind of can get that back. But it was such a fun, game. Pete did such a great job of just preparing us for moments like that. I mean, you would hear any of us that play for Pete who just constantly just, bang championship opportunity in our heads every chance we could. And so it was just another, opportunity for us. But the environment was so much fun, and specifically that play, I forgot what yard line we were, and everyone's wondering whether we're going to kick the field goal, whether
35-yard line.
We go for it. I still don't understand what kind of happened in that scenario. I don't know if Hauschka was hurt or something was going on. I just knew we were going back out there. Russ called. We knew we were going to go a hard count. We did that was one thing that Russ and Max Unger, I believe it was the center at the time, just did a really good job. We always did it during practice, was just hard counts. And then anytime someone jumped, I knew Max was going to snap it. So anytime you see someone jump, my mind is instantly go, because I knew he was going to snap it. And we all have a play that we go to when it's a free play. If it's a run, you keep the run on, and if it's pass, we kind of have these 4 verts. And so just worked out perfectly. We got them to jump, got a free play, and, Russ throws a great seam ball. I think it's one of his best throws that he does, besides the go ball or a deep ball. The seam ball, I think, is probably his next best throw, and he just put it right on the money.
There's so many things that had to happen for that moment to happen. And, as someone who's watched, pretty much every Seahawks game for the last however many years, I'm too old to say how many, but there is another, iconic Seahawks moment before you were with the Seahawks in the playoffs, where the Seahawks were in Green Bay and there was supposed to be a hot read and receiver didn't make the right, didn't get the adjustment. Matt Hasselbeck throws it, picked off, and that's the end of that game. So many people have to see the same thing, do the right thing in the moment for that all to happen. You all did, and ended up, leading to a Super Bowl. You caught a touchdown in that Super Bowl. It was kind of over by that point. But the other time, the next time you got to the NFC Championship, you did it again. It was a different experience, though, it felt like, in that game. I mean, maybe one of the best games ever played in NFL history.
Yeah, that game was wild. That game was kind of like everything that bad could go bad happened, and then everything that needed to happen for us to win happened type of game.
Pretty much. I mean, I don't want to be rude here to my guest, but I mean, Gary Gilliam and John Ryan were having better games catching touchdowns and throwing them than you and Russ were for the first part of that game. And it's interesting because you and Russ, people talk about the 2012 draft class. They talk about Bobby and Bruce and Russ. But you're part of that. It wasn't the drafted class. You're part of that class. And so you guys came in together and you went through all that together. Talk about you had 5 targets, no catches, and then you make that catch to send the Seahawks to complete the comeback, send the Seahawks to the Super Bowl. What was your emotional ride during that game?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a roller coaster of emotions throughout that game. The first interception running a slant and it comes off my hands and they pick at it. The second and the third one, people like to put on me. I don't think it was my fault, those two. But the fourth one, 100% was my fault. And I'm like, oh, man, like this is in the fourth quarter. We're down. But, like for me, that's just the ups and downs of life, of sports in general. I remember after that fourth interception, going to the bench and just kind of sitting there. And I just told myself not to feel sorry for myself. The game was on, still going. And I was going to have to go back out there. And so feeling sorry for myself and kind of sulking in my misery wasn't going to do anything positive for the rest of the game. And so I just tried to stay focused and, just continue to keep playing. I persevered and, overcame adversity, in multiple aspects of my life. And it was just another opportunity to kind of do the same in that game.
If it hadn't finished that way, is there someone on your team? Is there someone you would have thought, man, this person would have come over or would have at some point helped me work through that tough day? Is there someone that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much the whole team would have. I mean, I had really good relationships with, a lot of different people from different position groups. I kind of hung out with everyone, whether it was defense, Sherm and Cam, whether it was like the D line with me, Bain, and, Cliff Averill and, Mike Bennett, or tight ends, Luke Wilson at the time. I think Doug probably would have been the first one. But luckily that didn't happen and we won the game. So it's something that I didn't have to deal with.
Well, so, obviously that keyed you guys to get into the Super Bowl, and we won't go through all of that turmoil that happened there, but I think maybe the best catch of your career in that game. And if things had gone differently, you would have been right there next to David Tyree and Patriots infamy of people making unbelievable catches to put a dagger in their hearts. You talk about that play down the right sideline to put the team in position to win the game?
Yeah, I mean, I had an inside go, so I think I was number 2 in a 3-by-1 slot. So I was in the middle, and I had an inside go, and just something I felt like I kind of done really well over my career were kind of like 50-50 balls type things. I mean, and it was kind of really my role as a receiver with the Seahawks is, to run deep routes, get thrown 50-50 balls and try to come down with as many as I could. And with that one, it's just, I don't know, everything just kind of happened so fast. And, I knew I had a little bit of a hand on it, and, Malcolm did a great job of kind of getting his hand on it a little bit. And as I was kind of falling down, I was able to still kind of track the ball. And so, just kind of through all the midst of that chaos, I'm just, it kind of slowed down a little bit. And I was just able to kind of see the ball the whole time. I wish I had caught it facing the other way because then I could have like backpedaled into the end zone. But I was facing legs towards the end zone, so it was kind of awkward getting up. And yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of something that happened so slow during the time, but it happened pretty quickly. And, during the games like that, you kind of just really don't, you don't really kind of realize or process kind of what's happening until, a lot of it is over with.
Yeah. I mean, history's so interesting in that way, right? And like Malcolm Butler there, it doesn't make the play. You do. If things go the way I think everyone would have expected him to go, he has a very different career probably as a result of that. And otherwise, almost nobody would remember he was in coverage on that play.
Yeah, I mean, and credit to him on the Super Bowl play. I mean, people could say we could have. I mean, obviously, I felt like we should have handed the ball off to Marshawn, me and everybody else, but we didn't. And, the reality is Malcolm Butler made a phenomenal play. Like, you could say this, you could say that, but like at the end of the day, like, he made a play that defined his career and was able to catapult himself, into one of the biggest moments in any Super Bowl history.
You were part of easily the best era of Seahawks football and franchise history, and that team was littered with Hall of Fame, either future or near future or maybe farther future Hall of Fame players. Seahawks have had trouble kind of finding that level of talent. That everybody does, but I'm curious your perspective on like what it's like. You saw new guys come in after the initial crew was formed. How hard was it for new guys to come in and actually compete or find their place when you guys had that much talent all over the place?
I think what makes it tough for people coming into a situation like that after we've had, some success, let's just say for the first 3 years, my rookie year when we lost to Atlanta, the Super Bowl year we won, the Super Bowl year we lost. So people coming into that class or into the team, either during or post, those 3 years, I think what makes it so difficult is that there's so much success and, you come in and, some players kind of see what some of the older players are doing in the current moment. But they didn't really see the process or the work to kind of get to that spot. And so they're coming into a situation where, they're watching, certain people or, do things certain ways and think like, oh, that's the way, where yet they haven't really seen the process of getting to that moment. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, you kind of got some older guys are, taking a vet day, let's just say. Well, that's not the norm for everybody. And so I think that's what makes it a little bit tough for younger players to come into a team that's already has success. And then, it just comes down to, the vets and the leadership to kind of just show them. And, those young guys have to be open and, kind of, set their pride and ego to the side to be able to receive that, the knowledge and wisdom from the older players. But I think that's kind of the biggest challenge.
Well, it's interesting. You bring up the mindset for these guys, and I'm curious how much you've stayed connected with the team. Like you said, you went to a couple games this past year. You around the facility at all? Do you know any of the guys on the current roster?
Yeah, well, I played with Sam Darnold his rookie year.
Right.
I played with Leonard Williams as well. But I go around the facility a little bit, not a lot. I do stay connected and do certain things with the team. I've moved on into different ventures in a different world. Obviously, if people followed me or know me, I'm heavily into the golf world. And so I try to stay as connected as possible, but also I like to kind of, keep a little arm length away to, just kind of create some separation in terms of, what I did and kind of what I'm doing now. Obviously, it's a part of what I did and, a little part of my identity. I was never the type of person to kind of really, tie my identity to playing football. So that's allowed me to kind of transition out of football a little bit easier. But I enjoy being around. I still talk to the guys, still talk to my teammates. I still go to the games. I still love watching football. So there's still a lot of enjoyment from the game for me.
Well, that's what we only got you for a couple more minutes, but that's what I wanted to chat with you about next. Yeah. Is obviously you made the transition. It's not easy for anybody to change careers, especially one that's highly visible and that all encompassing. You started the Evergreen Golf Club, and by all accounts, it is doing really, really well. Talk about what you're doing over at the Evergreen Golf Club. What is it, and how did you get going on that?
Yeah, so Evergreen Golf Club is a premier indoor performance facility. Our Tacoma location is the largest one in the country. I took up golf in probably like 2014. My stepdad kind of got me and my brothers into it. When I got traded to the Jets is when I really got obsessed with it. You know, living on the East Coast, my wife and I only had one kid at the time. Then they were still in Seattle. So I was in Jersey. I was going home every other weekend. And so we were done at noon every single day. So me and Andre Roberts, one of my good teammates who play golf, we would just go play golf after practice or lifting workouts every single day. And so I kind of just got super obsessed with it. Then a good friend of mine, Andrew Putnam, who's a PGA Tour player, I was talking to him about kind of, doing a facility, and he introduced me to his cousin, Greg Bodine, who's now Bryson DeChambeau's caddy. And we kind of just met and talked about it. Our visions aligned. And so we kind of just went forward with it and just went out and did what we needed to do. We knew what we wanted it to look like, and just tried to grow it as fast as possible.
So this is a place where you can go and obviously hit off the sims, and you got all the indoor things to do that. You can play games, you can practice whatever you want to do. You can get lessons. It's also a lounge, right? Like you can go there and hang out with friends.
Yeah. I mean, you could pretty much do whatever. We have a huge junior presence. So we got a lot of families that come in, with their junior golfers. You could chip, you could putt. Like I said, our Tacoma location is the largest one. So you could hit probably 30-yard chips in there. So it's just something to, when the weather is now, obviously the weather's getting a little bit better. But during those 5-6 months that we have of bad weather, to keep your game sharp, it's a perfect opportunity to be indoors and a controlled climate and still be able to work and improve on your game.
So you as a golfer, I admit it, I looked you up on Gin. You're a pretty dang good stick, 4 handicap or so. So what's your club that, if things go haywire, the club that hurts you the most, and what's your club you trust the most?
Yeah, so my driver is probably by far my worst club. Definitely improving on it. I will say though that when I do need to get off the tee and hit a fairway, I will go to my 3 hybrid. So I guess one scenario, 2 different clubs. One's very awful, and one definitely finds the fairway. But I would say my short game and my putting is probably what allows me to score pretty well. I mean, my driver is a little squirrely, so a lot of them I got to get up and down a lot.
Well, especially in these tight Northwest fairways, sometimes that can be a problem. I know you got to run. Jermaine, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And definitely have to check out Evergreen Golf Club. I've not been there myself yet, but I'm going to head out later today and hit some balls. So maybe I'll head over there and check it out.
What's your handicap? Do you play?
Oh, it's ugly right now, man. I'm up at like 12.
Okay.
So like I was at 8, and then things went really haywire. So I'm slowly kind of creeping back up.
Yeah.
So I'll get there.
Nice.
All right, man. Jermaine, thank you so much. We will see you soon, and everyone should check out Evergreen Golf Club. Take care, man.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right. That is Jermaine Kearse, your Seahawks legend, coming on talking about not only his Seahawks career, and I think one of the most underrated Seahawks careers in franchise history. I mean, you talk about the LOB era Seahawks. You obviously talk about Richard Sherman, and you talk about Marshawn Lynch, and you talk about Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas. You talk about Doug Baldwin. You talk about Russell Wilson. Like, people rarely bring up Jermaine Kearse in that conversation. And the fact of the matter is, without Jermaine Kearse, I don't know that the Seahawks have a Super Bowl, like, period. And he, those 3 catches were iconic moments for this franchise. And I also just love, he's Northwesterner through and through. Grew up here, went to college here, played for the Seahawks, and, lives here now, obviously invested in the community. So, he's a guy I wanted to highlight. And I also think it's really cool because a lot of guys, when they exit football, they don't necessarily really know how to evolve into whatever's next. And I think when I heard about the Evergreen Golf Club, and by the way, this isn't an ad for it. This is literally like I'm a really big fan of the idea and wanted to talk to Jermaine about it a little bit. But it's like that's exactly, it makes a lot of sense. I went to places in Redmond to hit inside on golf sims and paid a fee to basically get practice rounds, and it was in like some office park and like this little crap place. Like there's all these little spots, but when you're in the Northwest and it rains like it does here in the winter and it gets dark as much as it does, having a really quality indoor place that you can go and get your swings in and hang out with your buddies is just, it's like a no-brainer. It's like Top Golf inside, except it's not just for messing around and drinking beers. It's also to actually get some real golf in. So really, really cool concept. They've already expanded from the Redmond one to Tacoma, and I haven't checked. I think it's like a membership thing, but maybe we'll end up doing a show there and highlighting it a little bit more and figuring out if we can get some kind of deal for people on it. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for how Jermaine Kearse overcame as much as he did during his Seahawks career, how much he contributed to the best era of Seahawks football, and how he's now transitioned into a really successful businessman with this venture. And I also respect the fact that he's a damn good golfer, because as you just heard from my handicap, I am not a good golfer, and I don't claim to be. I see we've got some super chats. BS in Seattle says, I'll never forget. Oh, Kearse, he the worst, with a big heart emoji. And Corey Hickok, who's been a member for over a year, says, awesome interview. Jermaine is such an awesome human and definitely underrated in his importance to the Super Bowl LOB teams. I agree with you, Corey, and thank you for being a member for as long as you have. Yeah, so good stuff there from Jermaine. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed that. I certainly did. I think coming up on the show this week, schedule is going to be released Wednesday. We're going to get a little bit of schedule information tomorrow. I think it's going to start leaking throughout the next few days. Last year by Wednesday morning, I had essentially predicted the actual Seahawks schedule. So we'll see if I can repeat that feat again, but we'll talk about that along the way. Also, if you did not see, I've been posting a few articles on the shows so you can read and not just listen if you'd rather, read some of the content. So I posted the rankings of the youngest to oldest for the NFC West. And in fact, I found some errors in the calculations for the show that I did on that. I actually redid them, and that's all in the post over at hawkblogger.com. If you want to read that and check out where all the ages are for all the different NFC West position groups, as well as I posted the schedule easiest to toughest for offenses, defenses, as well as overall on hawkblogger.com as well. So if you want to reference that or look at it as we kind of head toward schedule announce, that would be the place to do it. I see. Let's see. I think that was it for super chats. I see tours at Evergreen Golf Club. You can give a test run. So there's a 60-minute tour. 60-minute tour at the Redmond location, and you get a free hour in one of the sim bays. Well, that's pretty cool. So go check that out. Maybe we'll figure out something we can do with Evergreen Golf Clubs over time. I think that'll do it, folks, for this Monday edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Really, really enjoyed spending time with Jermaine, and we'll hopefully have more folks for you to talk to coming up. Until I see you next, this has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already.